Hi, I'm Cameron, and I don't just read comics, sometimes I watch them. On today's episode of Cameron Reads Comics, my friend Hannah and I watched the Amazon Prime television series, The Boys, but only season 1. Obviously, this television show is based on the Dynamite comic series written by Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson, but the episode you're listening to right now is based solely on the show, not the comic. There really won't be any of the comic book spoilers because I haven't read it yet. This week we are tackling Season 1, and next week we are going to be tackling Season 2 because that's all that's been released at the time of this recording. So, make sure to tune in next week as Hannah and I will be going over The Boys Season 2. As always, there are full spoilers ahead, so consider yourself warned, and make sure to follow Cameron Reads Comics on Instagram, and maybe give us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Now, here is your review of The Boys Season 1. Okay.
When DJs put their headphones around their neck,
Yeah.
You know how you see that happen?
Yeah.
It's terrible. It like suffocates your neck. I thought that was like a cool thing to do, and I just did it, and I was like, I'm gonna throw up. It was a terrible feeling.
Damn. Wow, that's gonna be our intro to this episode. For the record, for all the audience, note to self: Hannah thinks she's suffocating herself when she puts her headphones around her neck.
It was disgusting.
It's not a good look.
It's not a good feel.
Okay, so Hannah, welcome back to Cameron Reads Comics.
Thanks for having me back.
Hannah, you didn't even have to read a comic this week.
I know.
Do you think you miss comic books?
Well, the second one you gave me, I've been struggling with.
Oh, you're not gonna read it. It's fine.
Right.
It's not for her.
No.
Hannah's not a DC Universe fan, and you know, I'm gonna let the commenters, my numerous commenters, attack her for that reason.
I asked you for a Marvel one.
And I said
and you
no.
gave me Batgirl and... Is that what you gave me? Batgirl and Robin?
Batgirl Year 1, Robin Year 1. A magnificent series by Chuck Dixon and multiple artist collaborators. They're all so good. But, you know, anyways.
To each their own.
Some people just don't have taste.
Okay.
Here
we go.
It's morning. The coffee hasn't hit yet. I'm feeling snappy. All right.
Why hasn't the coffee hit yet? Because you forgot to get it for us?
Yeah, that's literally it. Hannah wanted to get one in on me, too. These are our mornings. Hannah and I have a dynamic that is...
We fight more than we love.
It is indescribable. Yep. Okay, so this week we're talking about The Boys and the Prime Video series, so we are not going to get into the comic at all because really I haven't read it. I don't imagine Hannah has read it. And we'll talk about this later, but from what I've heard, the series on Amazon's better. So... Hannah, as we go into that, what do you have any like experience with like superhero television at all?
Not so much superhero television. I tried to watch that Daredevil series that you told me to watch a while ago.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it.
Oh my gosh, Hannah, you were... Oh my gosh, okay, wait. You were there the night it came out.
Yeah, I think it was you, me, and Christian, right?
Me, and Christian. Christian is my best friend, and so we were all hanging out at my house, and I don't remember what we were doing. But
we used to watch a lot of movies at your house,
that's great.
The three of us.
The glorious days. Oh my gosh. And we had a Gone Girl viewing party. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, great friendships. And so we, friends make friends watch Gone Girl. Or
True.
Daredevil. But I remember the first season came out that night or whatever, and I was like, oh man, it dropped at midnight, and so we were all together at midnight, and I made you guys watch like 2 episodes.
Yep.
And it was the best. So.
Yeah, it's debatable. Yeah, so that's... I think that's it. I kind of watched The Flash. Was that the one that was on the CW?
Yeah, it still is, and it's wonderful.
That one. I watched the first season. Oh my gosh, wait, Smallville.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
I watched it all.
Hannah, we're in my...
I actually owned like season 3 on DVD.
Oh my gosh. I owned like seasons 1 through 7. I loved Smallville. I had a big Smallville poster in my room.
Does that count?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's literally Superman.
Okay. Well, no, I know that, but
yeah, it
it
counts.
wasn't like a comic. Like
yeah, but
Smallville
he had
wasn't-
superpowers.
Yeah,
and
he
like,
did, and he was Superman.
What's the verdict on Tom Welling? I think he's dreamy.
I don't know what he looks like now, but he was definitely dreamy then. Aside
He's
from,
still dreamy.
you know, well, he might have been exempt. I say most people on that show ended up in the Nexium cult, which
There's only one
That's
person that ended up.
no, the girl with the black hair, brown hair, Kristen
Crook.
she dabbled in it. I think
Yeah.
she got out when
She went
realized.
to a class or two, and then it didn't work out. It's crazy. If you guys want to hear about that, go check out the there's a Nexium podcast called Uncover Nexium, but there's also Michael Rosenbaum on that show who played Lex Luthor. He has his own podcast, and number 1, it's great, but number 2 is he had a Smallville week where he interviewed his cast members, and he asked them about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he asked Lana Kristen about it, and she's like, "Oh, I thought it was this. It was just, it was just their coworker."
I would love to listen to that.
It's great. It's interesting. I'll send it to you, and I won't post it. You guys can go find it. It's kind of old. I think it's a year old. But anyways, so Hannah, you didn't have too much experience with.
I watched The Walking Dead.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you. Then I was
Okay.
like, let's extend it to fantasy because
Yeah.
A Walking Dead is the comic book show, and like a lot of shows that people may or may not realize are comic book television. You know.
Right.
So you watch Walking Dead. Did you
Yes.
watch you watched Game of Thrones, which I kind of place
Yes.
in the same like it's a fandom, it's a fantasy world.
Yeah.
They thought
Yeah.
you were Hermione Granger at Ralph's one time.
Yep. I think we talked about that on the. Yep.
I'm like, I want everyone to know that someone thought you were Hermione Granger.
I mean, honestly, I'm fine with it. Look at her now.
Beauty and the Beast,
Yeah,
baby.
exactly.
If this was the Hermione Granger sequel, also known as Beauty and the Beast, I am the Beast. Hannah and I are in love. I'm just gonna say it. I'm just gonna let that sit.
Yeah.
Let all the listeners know.
Take in the silence on that one.
Hannah's like, don't talk to me. She's like, this was fun. Anyways, so could you actually share with us what happened the first time I asked you to watch The Boys?
Oh gosh, yeah, that was. I want to say that was like right in the middle of when we were all like really quarantined, right? Like I think was when you first told me to watch it because I had just watched +1 with Jack Quaid.
Because I watched The Boys, then I watched +1 because Jack Quaid was in it, and I loved it.
And then you told me to watch +1, and I did. And I love Jack Quaid mostly because I love Dennis Quaid, who now I'm realizing Jack Quaid is his own, and I fully back him.
That is such a weird. Like, I've
But-
never heard that celebrity dad to be the one where girls are swooning.
It's not, but I have always my whole life considered Dennis Quaid to be a straight up zaddy.
I always thought him and like Pierce Brosnan were the same person.
Okay, but
I literally
that's too top notch.
zaddies.
Oh, yeah.
You think Pierce Brosnan's a zaddy?
Oh yeah.
Damn. I just did.
I don't know what it is about Dennis Quaid that I like, but I just have always the Parent Trap, The Rookie.
The Rookie of that's the one that comes to my head.
Anyway.
Hannah's like, let's Parent Trap, but like with me. Oh my gosh. But you'll appreciate Jack Kilmer.
Anyway,
now.
you told me about Jack Quaid, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. I love Dennis Quaid. I'll check out his son and watch +1, and then you had me watch The Boys, and I watched the first 3 minutes of the first
If
episode.
that. Yeah, it must
Are we
be
allowed
3.
to do spoil? Like, are we going to talk
We're-
about things that happened?
Full spoilers, girl.
Okay, cool. So, like, right off the bat, when Robin gets hit by, I thought it was a bus. I didn't really know what had happened.
It was the A train.
It was A Train. And she gets, like, demolished, and he's standing there holding her
hands.
her nub hands, and
Yeah.
like, I don't like nubs, and like, it was just like, I was like, I don't like the show, and I turned it off. Like, I was like, this is too bloody. I'm not gonna be able to do it. I'm weak now. I like don't handle gore very well like I used to. I don't handle violence well like I used to. I used to watch, like, people would be like, oh, it's super violent. I'd be like, yeah, give it to me. Like, that's what I want to watch. And now I can't. I watch, like, Disney most nights now, and I'm like, I'm soft.
She's she's out here watching Beauty and the Beast or The Rookie with Dennis Quaid, and then she's like, "I love Dennis Quaid. Let's check out what his son's up to." Oh my gosh!
Basically, that's kind of how it happened.
Well, you know what's funny too is the way I describe this show, or like, I think you were here when I kind of was recommending it to someone else, but it's like, I tell people, it's like, what if Quentin Tarantino did a superhero show? Because it's like, it's that grotesque violence. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was like, oh, there's, some suspension, because some of the violence is so absurd. Like, that scene is
Right.
both so real, but also so absurd. And,
Yes.
in its portrayal of all of it. So I'm like, oh, she can handle it. But then it's like, ooh, it was a very cute scene where like, oh my gosh, she's picking up from work, and then he is in love with her, and they're talking about Billy Joel, whatever, la la la. And then,
well, and it had a lot of the, did you ever see Life Itself?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, there's a scene from Life Itself that
was a no.
it really reminded me of, and it's a very sad scene. And then that happened, and then I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. Like, I've got too much time to be sitting around doing nothing, but then thinking about that violent stuff that I just watched because I wasn't doing anything. And yeah, so I was like, Cameron, I'm not watching it. And you were like, you got it. You were like, it's a lot. It's like violent. I get it.
Yeah. Well, I think this is shortly after the same window where we realized that you didn't like David Fincher. And so I'm like,
yeah, probably.
It was like around the same time. And so I was like, and sometimes for the fans out there too, not everyone's going to like what you give them. And so that's why I'm like, Hannah wasn't a huge fan of the Chuck Dixon book I gave her, The Batgirl, and so I'm like, okay, well, let's get you something you do like. And,
Yeah.
with The Boys, maybe as much as I want to be able to share this, because this is, right now, being aired, my favorite television show, because I just think it's so fun.
Yeah.
For sure. Like, I look the most forward to The Boys,
Yeah.
because this season especially, and we'll get into it, it is so fun to watch.
It is. It's so fun. It's super fun. I'm glad I went back.
Yeah, me too. And so I think it wasn't my recommendation, but it was Jesse's that got you to, okay.
No, it was my roommate.
It was Mia?
Mia. Yeah, she had wanted to, no, it was, well, kind of. So she had wanted to watch it, and she'd also heard that somebody recommended The Umbrella Academy to her as well.
Yeah.
And so we were like, I had said, I tried to watch The Boys, and it was like whatever for me. And then, so we watched the first episode of The Umbrella Academy, and we were just honestly just not really into it. We were like pretty bored. And so the next night, she was like, let's try The Boys. And I was like, okay. And I figured, I knew that scene's coming. I'll just close my eyes for it and like wait, or I'll just like come in the room, in 5 minutes or whatever after I know that scene would have happened. So that's what we did. I didn't watch. I closed my eyes during the scene.
So funny. That is so funny.
I didn't want to see her bloody arms. And so I closed my eyes.
And that slow-mo sequence, though, too, is so good.
It's
like the
so
explosion. Good. Oh, shit. You only watched it once.
Yeah, but I remember it every night
funny.
before I'm just kidding.
Oh, my God. Calm down.
And that kind of actually became like how we made it through the whole show. Like, if something was going to get really violent, I would just look at Mia and not at the TV, and I would know what was going on based off of her facial expressions, because she's super expressive when she watches like gross stuff. And she like moves she like squints, and she does like that thing.
I just want like a supercut now of like Mia watching or your face reacting to Mia's face.
She was watching that movie Midsummer, whatever that one is. And she was watching it on her computer for some reason. And I was sitting on the couch one time watching her try to watch that movie. And it was so funny because she was like trying to take a bite, and then she'd be like, make these like horrible faces, and then would like move the food away. And I was like, why are you trying to eat and watch that movie at the same time?
It is scary.
So she's fun. She's fun to watch scary things. So that's how I made it. I mean, I watched the whole season, obviously, and I watched a lot of it. But there was two scenes in particular that I remember. I was like, I'm not going to watch this. I'm going to watch Mia instead.
What was the second one?
When Kimiko is, when you first meet her.
Oh, yeah, that's tough.
And she kills all those people, and she like rips their hearts out, and like.
Yeah. They let her out of her cage for the first time?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, that's
I was
scary.
watching it, and then I was like, nope. And then I watched Mia instead.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I guess going into the actual show, did you like it?
Yes.
Eventually you did?
I did. Yes.
Okay, well.
I got, there was a middle part where I was like, oh, okay, I hope this kind of ramps up and we get like, basically I think the problem is whenever I binge anything, because season 1's just available, so I was just going through it and then like.
How lucky you are.
I know.
Well, season 1 came out straight like season 1 was
Oh, so
all
everybody
out.
had season 1.
Yeah,
like
but
that.
season 2 didn't come out like that, and I'm like, oh, I just wanted as much as I could have.
Yeah. So I've noticed, well, it's probably not me. I think a lot of people are like this. When you watch something consistently, like a lot at once, like certain things you notice because you've watched 2 episodes a night or 3 episodes a night, or you watch 1 episode every single night back to back. And so the repetitiveness of like Butcher being so like vengeful and this like cycle that they were constantly getting into of like, we're going to expose this, but then they just like kept getting themselves like deeper and deeper in a hole. I was kind of like, okay, can we let's like, I hope the whole series isn't going to be us watching them be kind of on the run and also kind of chasing them. Like, I wanted more to happen in the story, and it did.
Yeah, honestly,
I was very happy.
I thought the pacing of this show was so impressive. Like, I especially for the first season, I felt like every single episode was really, really good.
Yeah, and it was only 9. I think it was only 9 episodes. 8 episodes.
Which
first.
I'm a huge fan of because, you know, as a fan of The Flash and Arrow and even Daredevil and like some of the Netflix Marvel shows at the time, like those are 13 episode seasons. And while like, you know, similarly, again, I want all the content I can have with this stuff. Sometimes less is more. And so I think that the 8 or 9 episode season where they can, number one, pump that budget, same budget they would have for like a 13 episode, pump that into the 8 or 9 episodes.
Make better episodes.
Exactly. Better episodes, better pacing. They can fit more plot, less kind of side drama going on. And I think that this show was a really great example of how that method can work. And especially with something like serialized superhero, comic book, whatever content, because if they can cut out some like less episodes but pump that into more superpower budget, come on, that's like my jam, you know.
That's
I'm like, give me all the special effects. So I'm glad you liked it. Okay, so this world, I think they do a really great job of building a world, and one that's also like similar but definitely fictitious. So how did you feel about Huey being the protagonist, being the kind of our entry character into that world?
He was super relatable.
Like, you know, it's crazy. Here's a fun fact for you. Simon Pegg, who plays Huey's dad, was if you read the comics, Huey's based off Simon Pegg.
Oh.
Isn't that fun?
That is fun.
And then they were able to cast him in the show.
Love that for them.
There's actually fun fact.
That's a good fun fact that should be on the IMDb trivia page.
I think it is.
Oh, okay. Well.
Did you not look there?
No, not yet.
For the listeners, Hannah has her IMDb open, so she has every available resource at her disposal for her.
I love IMDb.
It's so great. But wait, so you liked Huey?
Yes, I liked him a lot. I liked that they really played up his normalcy. And like that he's ordinary, but in a good way. I mean, not in like a negative. I don't think that's a negative thing at all. I think it's just like to show the scale of the different people in this world, with Huey being the representative of most people, right? Of like most people who aren't superheroes, but then also like Butcher's not a superhero, but he's also not your average person.
Huey, they do. I guess the word I apply to him is like Huey's very fragile. You know what I mean? And just like him being a human, like flesh and blood human, he's more fragile than someone like Butcher, who number one is hardened to the world of supers, and then, you know, obviously every other super who can freaking smoke him. Yeah.
Right. And so that, I think he was a good choice. And I think as like this show goes on, or as the season goes on, and he starts to gain a little more confidence in himself and just not in what they're doing, and like his voice or like his opinions and his stands on them, and like, you know, what it is that they're doing. I thought it was good.
And okay, how did you feel too then, I guess secondary, how'd you feel about the world that they kind of built? Because I feel like there's no good characters. There's like, everyone kind of had an edge to them. You see, and especially like this is based on a Garth Ennis comic, who is the writer. He's very almost, and not in an offensive way, just in a very real way. I think he's very, I want to say disdainful, or like, number one, sorry, he wrote, I hit my mic because I'm passionate, but he wrote Preacher, which is pretty much an irreligious series. It's kind of a gnarly critique on religion, organized religion. I'm sure you saw some of those tones here
100%.
in this show.
Yep.
And almost, I don't want to say nihilism, but like very much a kind of like disdainful, like even.
There were tones of that for sure.
But I'm like, are good. The superheroes that we trust are bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are the worst ones. And so, how'd you kind of feel about that, like world being sad, or like that tone, or I guess those themes?
Like, how did I think they worked for the show?
Yeah, or how'd they work for the show? But then, how did you like them? You know what I mean? Did you agree? Were you like, ooh, I don't know, was it entertaining? Were you okay with those?
Yeah, I definitely would say it was entertaining, and I definitely also I think it. It was dramatized for sure, but I don't know that I think it's that far off from the world we live in, to be honest. I mean, I think that those things, obviously not to the extent, and obviously we don't have superheroes, but like
we don't, not proven yet.
Okay, sure, yeah, okay, but as we know it right now, I think the corruption is probably not far off from things that happen that we don't know about. And this was just like an eye into it. And like I said, obviously it's very played up. And the like the religious stuff was funny to watch.
Yeah.
When they go to the camp and I would argue though that Starlight's sort of the like, she's not corrupt in any way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say that she's pretty much like, I mean, I don't know, unless you're saying at the end when she goes to help them that makes her corrupt, but I wouldn't think that does. I think that's just her.
I think she's the most morally upright.
She definitely is.
And but I think but like it's also like I don't think she's a perfect character either. You know what I mean?
No, she's not. But I think if you compare, like, on the one end of the spectrum you've got her, and then on the other end you've got Homelander, or even one up is, oh gosh, what's her name?
Queen Maeve.
No. The lady who's in charge of the whole thing.
Oh, Madeline Stillwell.
Yeah. Like, in terms of corruption, right? So, like, Starlight's on the one end of it. They're on the other end of it. I think that, to me, Queen Maeve just seemed like a defeated character.
I can't wait for you to see her arc in season 2 because they continue that. Like,
I love her.
Queen Maeve is an amazing, really well done character, and I'm so glad. Like, season 1, you didn't get to see her do much, but with moments and events that happened in season 1, there you really do experience the ramifications in season 2, and it's really, really, really well done. Like, I'm so excited. And like, but anyways, going back to Starlight, I actually think you're right. I think she was our most morally upright because we want to be able to say that, our precious human fragile lamb, Huey, is able to be that guy. But no, he murdered Translucent.
Oh yeah, he straight up murdered him.
He's messed up.
Yeah.
And so even, because I'm
to no fault of his own necessary. I mean, he got thrusted into this world because what's his name ran over his girlfriend.
Or A-Train.
Yeah, so I think had none of that stuff ever happened, like, I think he is a morally straight person, and then
desperate times call for desperate measures.
Yeah, circumstances changed, and then he became a murderer, which debatable. I guess that makes you not moral, but
I want it to be recorded here now. Everyone just said Hannah's pro murder, so.
I know. I was like, oh, it's bad until something happens to you, then it's fine, which I don't think that at all.
Last episode was freaking pro drugs. Now we're pro murder. We're going to give you some really lighthearted content next week just so you can be pro something nice. Okay, so then let's break it down. I usually ask who's your favorite character, but I think there's so many great characters in this series. And so my question's going to be, we're going to break it up in 2 categories. Number 1, who's your favorite member of the boys? And then who is your favorite member of the 7?
Okay, so favorite member of the boys is Frenchie.
Hannah told me I might be surprised. Am I supposed to be surprised by Frenchie?
Did that make sense to you about me?
No, elaborate.
Okay, so I love, you know this about me, I love a supporting actor's role.
Can we just say it right now? Hannah and I love Sam Rockwell, and we
love him. It's disgusting how many stays. I mean, we talk about him every day, probably.
Honestly, we must protect Sam Rockwell at all costs. And then obviously we talk about Christoph Waltz and everything else. But we just wanted to say, number one, Sam Rockwell, this podcast in every way is dedicated to you.
Yeah, and if he ever were to hear this, I would die.
I would die. But
I just want him to know that two of his biggest fans ever.
Oh my gosh. We just got to do any sort of Sam Rockwell property next.
We could just do a whole podcast really on his movies.
I am so down. If we ever become Patreon exclusive, we're just going to go Sam Rockwell all the way. Nobody asked for that content, but nobody asked for this content. I would just like
to talk about it, so.
But okay, so anyways, we love Sam Rockwell because he's just an amazing supporting character in everything from Charlie's Angels to obviously Jojo Rabbit. I mean, come on.
Obviously. 3 Billboards. I mean, the list goes on.
And on.
But what I love about him and about Christoph Waltz and other actors who tend to just play the supporting role is that, like, I get that they're the supporting role. They're not the lead actor, their lead role. But without that character, there's so much missing and there's so much story and so much context and so much that we miss out on. And that's what I liked about Frenchie is that he was just there at all the right moments to add this, like, humor at a lot of things. Yeah. And smarts at a lot of things, and then just his, like, undying love for Kimiko at the end. I just was like, I love this so much.
I see how you like him because he is such a romantic, and there's actually a great interaction between him and Mother's Milk, because, and Mother's Milk might be my favorite member.
And I really like him too.
Yeah. Oh, dude, every character in the series.
There's nobody in The Boys that I didn't like.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's everyone is great.
The Butcher is what Butcher's what he is.
I'm like, honestly, I kind of have to shelf Carl Urban because he is so good. Like, his Bill the Butcher was
incredible.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Like, perfect. And, like, Huey, obviously, I just love Huey, and we love Jack Quaid on this podcast as well. But I love Mother's Milk. And so I think the moment between him and Frenchie where they kind of talk about where they, Frenchie's trying to come to Mother's Milk and say, oh my gosh, we need to take her with us. We need to, like, help save her. And not, like, when she's in the cage. It's, like, when they're laying low at the hotel. He's like, and he appeals to Mother's Milk's OCD. And he's like, yo, man, like, you need everything just right. And she's not right now. And it's like, you can see, number one, how much Frenchie cares for her to the point where he's trying to appeal to someone that, frankly, him and Mother's Milk don't get along.
No, not at all.
And I also love that dynamic that they don't get along. I'm like, it's a rambunctious, literally ragtag group of guys who, you know, they have their issues, but they get it done.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I liked both those. I think that saying Butcher or Huey's just it's a little bit too obvious.
Yeah, always.
And I like those characters, but they're not the ones that, like, when they come on the screen, I'm, like, excited to see what their lines are going to be or what. Well,
because they're always on the screen.
Yeah, or like what their actions are going to be.
Or even friggin', I love that line too when they're at the concert or the Christian thing, and Mother's Milk's like, he's trying to get on Butcher's case because Butcher's, like, yelling at the dude about Jesus or whatever. And he's like, okay, we apologize on behalf of our friend. And he grabs him and he's like, oh, don't be mad that you're Baptist ass or something. And that's what Butcher says. And he's like, dude, I'm Episcopalian. And I'm like, I don't know why, but that is so funny. I'm like, oh, I love Mother's Milk. And he had, like, a family, and he was actually really trying to redeem himself and, like, try and, like, make a way for him to be, like, I don't know. He's trying to better what his past had done, because I guess they feel really bad about the lamplighter stuff, which is also we'll talk about it next week, because that whole arc is explored.
Okay, it's like I don't know much about what that is. Okay, that makes sense.
And, like, this is my third time watching it through, because I watched it twice before, just twice last year because I love it, and then third time for the pod, and so. Anyways, favorite member of the 7?
That one's a lot tougher for me.
It is. And because, want to know why? Is our villains are so good.
That's true.
It is so hard. Obviously, we're going to shelve Starlight, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really love her because she's the easy one to love, right? She's cute. She's moral. She's what?
She's also from Des Moines, Iowa, and I sit here wearing my Northern Iowa sweatshirt. Go Panthers! So, I'm like, let's not knock that too far out. All right.
I think The Deep is my favorite.
Well, Hannah, number one is because it's Chase Crawford.
I mean, that helps, but
Hannah's like, that's 2/3 married. Sorry. Hannah literally was like, why didn't you tell me Chase Crawford is in the show? And I'm like, I don't know.
Why didn't you tell me that Chase Crawford looks like that?
Oh my gosh, he is so buff.
So buff.
There's like that towards the end when he's in Sandusky, Ohio, and he's shaving his chest. I'm like, you're so buff.
So buff. I know. I just think he's so, for somebody who is so like handsome and like ripped and like just, let's just say he's gorgeous.
I love him.
He's such a dweeb. Like
as a human?
No, his personality. Like the Deep's personality is just such.
He's a dweeb?
He's a dweeb to me. He's just this like, okay, barring the first part where he like pulls his dick out, which also Mia and I were like shocked. We were shocked at that scene. It really caught me off guard. I was like, this is not where I thought. It was before you had even told me that it was corrupt superhero. So I didn't know going into it that these superheroes were bad. I was like, what the heck is going on?
People want me to describe like the superheroes being bad, but I'm like, okay, picture like superheroes as a corporate entity. And that's like, that's.
But you hadn't said any of that to me yet. So I still at this point was like, oh, these are just superheroes. Like I didn't realize they were horrible,
so
like, whatever. So anyway, but then it's just like all the stuff that happens to him afterwards where he like, they make fun of him for talking to fish and they make fun of him for being like kind of like this like softy and like when they find that box in the bottom of the ocean and it's got like, it says like, we're coming for you. And Homelander's like, oh, they put it in this type of box because I wouldn't be able to see it, whatever. They're like, oh, the Deep found it. And he's like, yeah, one of my sources told me it was here. And he goes, tell her who your source is. And he's like, I don't want to. And then she's like, tell him who your sources were. And he was like, it was a porpoise. I just was like, I don't know. He's so endearing in his like really gross way.
Yeah. And what's funny is like, that whole arc, and I think it was so well done because he feels that like I don't want to say disdain because there's other words, but he feels that just like I guess oppression for being the fish guy.
Yeah, and
like he tries to make a difference, and so then he tries to rescue the dolphin.
And then he kills the dolphin.
I think you're right, dweeb, but I'm just like I just think of him like a mook. He's like a henchman almost. Like he's just incompetent, and they try and give him. Yeah, he tries to redeem himself, but he's so incapable.
He is so incapable.
Yeah.
I mean, even the part when he's grocery shopping and the lobster's talking to him and he's I'll get the lobster out. And then like, he's like, okay, I'll rescue you. And then the guy just like spears the lobster in half and he's just like, ugh.
He just knifes him right in the head. Yeah.
And his face is just like, it's just like, he wasn't even like sad or upset. He was just like, dang it, did it again. Like just kind of just was like, I don't know. I mean, so I like that about him. I really, really hated that really awkward sex scene where the girl sticks her hands in his gills. You're going to be the girl who shoves her hands in her gills. Okay, that's disgusting.
That was weird.
Also, just his gills in general, honestly, they really grossed me out, which I don't know why. I was like, ugh. Every time they showed him like moving, it was like made me like nauseous a little bit.
There's a talk. They talk in like the second season.
Ew, they talk?
Yeah.
The gills themselves.
Voiced by Patton Oswalt. Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
It is so funny. It's interesting. Okay, so.
But I also really love Queen Maeve. She's just been like kind of like shit on. They just tell her she's a product of what they wanted her to be, and I think that goes against a lot of who she actually is or who she wanted to be. Like how she talked about how when she started, she was like Starlight, and she had all these like, grand ideas of being a hero and being a good person and doing all these things, and then found out that in order to be in the Seven or to be a superhero or to have what she has, she's basically got to be a bad person.
Oh yeah.
And I felt for her in that sense.
That's so funny. My favorite member of the Seven, honestly, I gotta think about the Seven now. Black Noir. No, just kidding. He was in it for like 2.5 seconds. But also, I love his cowl. Like, let's just talk about all the costumes for a second.
Yeah.
Love it. I think my favorite member of the Seven, honestly, I wanted to shelve him, but Homelander, man, he is so good. Tony Starr. I'm like. bar none. His freaking performance is outstanding to the point where
I agree.
everyone just is. All the fans now want him to be Reverse Flash in the Flash movie because he's just so evil and scary. Like, the airplane scene when he gets... I usually kind of hate the moments where people get mad and, like, their heat vision flares up. That scene was terrifying when he's like, get back, or, like, everything.
Yeah,
and, like,
that scene was so sad.
everything with Madeline Stillwell in him was terrifying. Well, and it really shows, like, because
cringy.
it shows that the superheroes aren't bad for nothing either. You know what I mean? It really gives them, like, they become sympathetic characters. And, like, because I'm, like, super... At the very end, you know, when he's trying to find out about Becca and, like, what happened to her, is she missing, whatever, they went in to say that the guy, one of the doctors that he found was like, you should have been raised in a home with parents that love you, not in a lab. And I think that we really kind of find that, well, with me being a huge Superman fan, like, the reason Superman is so inherently good is because he was raised on a farm with a family that loves him. You know what I mean? And, like, this is the number one reason he wasn't, is because he couldn't be touched. And that kid was just terrifying. And so I think that Homelander is so scary, like, so terrifying. And I love the Deep. And I also think that A-Train was amazing this season.
Yeah.
A-Train was, he was almost, like, pathetic. Like, really.
Oh, he totally was.
He was pathetic, and, like, I loved that they did those little character things where it's like he couldn't go off script because, like, the kid who had cancer, like, was like, I want
my God.
I want it translucent. And he's like, but I'm here. He's like, we can get translucent now. He's like, when you get better? And he's like, terminally ill, and it was just so bad. It was just such, like, a mess. I loved. He
He
like,
was a mess. Yeah. I didn't.
And Popclaw, like, him and Popclaw, I loved that arc.
Yeah, I would say there was nobody that I again, there's really nobody that I disliked. I mean, it's like you love to hate Homelander.
Of course, yeah.
He's just so good at what he does, even though you're like, you're a terrible person, but you love him he's good. He's good TV. He's good to watch. The A-Train Popclaw thing was also disturbing, but like when she like exploded that guy's head, actually I really still don't know how it happened. That also, they love weird sex scenes on the show. I mean, they're weird. That was a weird scene. That wasn't really a sex scene, but it was a weird thing that happened.
With Madeline Stillwell?
No, with, what's her name? Popclaw? Is that her name?
Popclaw, the one where she killed the guy?
Yeah.
It was a sex scene.
When it was gnarly. I was like, oh God, that was not, I was like, did not love that. The
idea of him being an addict, though, too, I just loved. Yes,
I think they played that really well. That storyline of how that, like, what that does to people's decisions and the actions that they make, based off of getting drugs.
I'm like, we know because we've read My Heroes.
Yeah, exactly. I was just gonna say that.
I'm like, we know all about that. Okay, so there's a lot of relationships on the show. Again, I'm going to two-part question.
Yeah.
Who had the best relationship, and then who had the most messed up relationship? So, the healthiest relationship, I'm like...
Okay, is that what you mean by best?
Yeah, healthiest.
No one.
I'm like, wait, I wrote one down, I think. And that might be the only one. For me, this might be my answer. Oh, Frenchie and Kimiko.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you're right.
And then Huey and Starlight for the first half.
No, yeah, it's like, no.
For the first half, but also...
But that wasn't like an honest relationship.
I think partially was.
I think that their intentions are honest, but they both came from... They were both lying.
She wasn't lying.
Well, she was at first, because doesn't he not know it's Starlight at first?
Yeah, but that's different because it's like she wasn't lying. Like, I'm sure if he asked, she'd be like, yeah, I'm a member of the Seven. But I'm
just saying their whole thing, their foundation, was built on them being completely incompatible. Well, no, not incompatible, but just built on. It was like, it sounds so dramatic, but it was built on lies.
No, it wasn't though, because he also didn't know she was Starlight either. Like, that's why I'm like, it was half honest.
Okay.
And then also Frenchie and Kimiko.
Yeah, I forgot about Frenchie and Kimiko, which is funny because I said that was my favorite.
Those are the only two ones. Okay, then here, let's just get into it. What's the most messed up one?
Oh, well, it's obviously.
I might have one that surprises you. Obviously.
Well, I would say Homelander.
And Stillwell.
were
That was the most messed up.
So messed up.
It was so weird and gross.
It was so, every time oh my God, it was disgusting.
Also, I don't know the actress who plays Madeline Stillwell.
She did a great job, though.
I love her. I think she's
did good.
beautiful, and she's so perfect. And the only other role that I remember her from, she is Daniel LaRusso's girlfriend in The Karate Kid. And
no, she's not.
Yeah,
that's her?
right? Yeah, the first one. That's her.
Oh,
and I'm like,
man.
she's perfect. And I literally thought she's so great in the series. And I'm like, oh, and then Homelander was he's so weird. And the way that they had, like, she had her control over him was amazing.
Yeah.
I just loved
it. But I really liked when he started to kind of figure it all out. Like when he started getting suspicious of her and curious about his past. And then, like I loved the part where he was like, I was the one who made that superhero terrorist. That was me.
Yeah.
And, like, that whole thing. And then when they're talking, like, after they have sex, again, awkwardly, and she's like, something about a miscarriage, and, like, you see in his face, like, he realizes that she was lying this whole time. It's, like, it's so good. And the acting, like, the subtle facial expressions of, like, him being like, oh, I'm laying here and, like, everything that she's been saying to me is a lie.
Yeah.
It was so good. So I feel like that's kind of an obvious answer also, though, for who's the most messed up, like, relationally. Because I don't necessarily, I'm confused still, and maybe I'm sure I'll get more answers from watching season 2. But Butcher and Becca, is that her name?
Yeah.
I don't understand. I'm still just confused about, like, did Homelander actually rape her, or did she want to have sex with Homelander? Like, things like that. I'm sure it gets into that, but I'm like, I'm confused because everything that we think we know about that storyline turns out to not be what's actually happening, like, all the way up to the season finale. And so, like, the storyline of them, of, like, he raped her, she got pregnant, the baby killed her. Did she have a miscarriage? No, she's just here alive still with this baby.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. I was just so curious. I'm like, well, what really happened? Because
you didn't even have to wait a year. You don't even have to wait a year.
No, I could start watching tomorrow if I wanted to, which I probably will.
You need to. Yeah.
You know what? It might happen tonight.
We're on a timeline. Critical timeline. Yeah, and honestly, they'll address that, obviously.
Right,
they go greatly into the Becca stuff. And also, that actress is amazing. Her name is Chanel.
Yeah, she was on One Tree Hill.
She was on The Flash, and she played Patty Spivot, and she's amazing. I really like that actress.
She's so pretty.
She's great. But, okay, my argument for the most effed up relationship, Starlight and her mom.
Oh.
Because literally every single time, like, Starlight's mom, like, number one is she kind of overpowers Starlight in her, like, voice.
Yeah.
Because she's like, think about my friends and what my friends are going to think. Think about what all this stuff. Like, she really, like, tried to make Starlight go up and be picture perfect in front of the Christian audience. Mm-hmm. Because how many of her friends were going to be watching. And I'm like, she lied to her daughter about having superpowers. I'm like, or like how she got the powers and everything.
Yeah.
And like why her dad left. It was all so messed up. I was like, ooh. And I think it was.
That was. Yeah.
I'm like, let's not overlook that relationship. And that mother did a great job. And I think, Starlight did a great job in the whole scene, too.
I kind of forgot about that.
I know. And
I
was
you're
like,
right.
I didn't realize until, like, the second or third watch. But I'm like, oh, this is. It makes her, like, Starlight such, like, a. Because she really is someone that wants to be, like, morally upright and honest,
Yeah, that was heartbreaking. That scene when she's like, you made me this way at, like, the expense of everything else. Mm-hmm. That was so sad.
So sad.
Good point, Cameron.
I'm
glad you paid more attention than I did to that, obviously.
I've also watched it 2 more times than you have. Also, okay, I guess I'm into my last question because we got to wrap things up. But remember to tune in next week. We'll go into season 2. What was your, or out of 10, what would you rate season 1?
Oh, I hate when you do this because my scale and our scales are just so.
Oh, my scales can be so high.
8?
Any point? You're allowed to do decimal points too. Like it's just 8. Really?
Okay. It's closer to 9, to be honest.
Good.
That's a big score coming from me.
Yeah, no.
Because I'm stingy with my high scores. Sam Rockwell, 10.
Sam Rockwell, if he's in the series, 10.
He's more like 100.
Also, Haley Joel Osment, loved that arc. I just really want to.
The fact that was him.
I'm like 10.
Was incredible.
10 because of Haley Joel Osment.
You're right. That just made my 9 and 10 because I forgot he was in it.
I give this honestly a 10. I think
that makes sense for you. That's what I thought you would give it.
Love this show. And like I was thinking about it because I'm like, some people are like, you can't give it 10 because that means nothing could ever get better. And I'm like, no, this is 10 for what it is and like what I watched. And because I'm like, I gave this a 10. I also gave Squirrel Girl a 10 and Saga a 10. I'm like, no, season 1 of The Boys, absolute 10.
Well, I think you can give it a high. I feel like you can. I approve your 10.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it, but I approve it because there's really no flaws. Like you can't find a flaw in it.
Yeah.
From the acting to the special effects to the storyline, the writing, all of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Costumes.
Pacing, costumes, and I think all the interpersonal relationships among the characters are so well done.
It's really complex.
Like you and I didn't talk really at all about the Huey Butcher relationship, which we could have gone a long time on. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And we will in the next season, maybe or maybe not. But it's like there's so many things that I think this show is just so airtight.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's also so like let's not overlook. It's so creative, and like it is. Just the way that they're receiving, because I think it's vastly different from the comic book, and so, not vastly, but there are different some key differences, and so it's just like wow, I just think it was so really executed so well, and like also it's fun, and I think
it is very fun.
Let's not overlook, I don't want to overlook that because maybe it's not freaking the Phantom Thread or something that's like. Art or Schindler's List. I'm like, no, this is good fun, and also there are complex themes, and like there are.
Yeah, it was good TV.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like,
it's like what TV should be.
Yeah, season 1 gets a 10. Oh, what it
8.5.
Be. We need a lot more body explosions on regular television.
I know I can't. I don't know that I can give anything like a 10 that I can't like watch.
Yeah.
All the way through because I do have to close my eyes so much that I'm like I don't know that I can put a 10 on that. But 8.5, 8.7 for me that's a high.
That's a great. Yeah, no, Hannah's very stingy with her grades.
Yeah, so
can you give an example of a 10 for you so the audience knows?
Movies or TV?
Either.
10 Jojo Rabbit.
Right. Okay. Want to know why?
10 When Harry Met Sally.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Like I feel that too.
Most of my movies, I think, most movies I keep in like a 7 to 9 range.
Great. Well, we're gonna have a lot of fun with our rating scale or whatever when we do. Hannah is going to come back, obviously, next week to do episode 2, but we put it on the calendar. Hannah's going to come back at the end of the year. I think it might be the first week of January. For Best of the Year.
I'm so excited for that. Oh,
we're going to go break down all of our favorite things of the year, and it'll be so fun. And also, I think I'm going to do a quarantine, like best of quarantine watch.
Oh.
Because I'm like, I didn't watch a bunch of stuff from 2019 and 2020. I watched a bunch of stuff during quarantine. Now it's all over the place, and I'm so excited. It'll be fun. We'll get into it. But stay tuned next week for The Boys Season 2 review. Also, go check out Cameron Reads Comics on Instagram, and please leave me a 5-star rating and a review. Thank you, Hannah, for being here this week and hanging out with us.
Back.
Oh, Hannah.
Can't wait to be back next week.
We will see you next week. Smell you later.